Welcome to episode 7 of Shadow School. My name is Brianne Elise Miller, and I am, as always, your host and guide in these conversations where we explore each of the shadows and then a little bit about the gift and the siddhi of each gene key. Today, we are talking about gene key 7, and our shadow today is division. Our gift is guidance, and our siddhi or divine gift is virtue. And we're going to dig right into the shadow of division. It's just like a slog we're going through here: chaos, intolerance, impatience, division. Here we are. Conflict was yesterday. Now we're in division. So much of this exists in the world right now. It's the underlying frequency of our world. And a lot of that stems from the fact that we do live in these human bodies and we feel very separated from source in a way. We have this duality as part of our human existence. But it's our job to do the work, to follow the curriculum of our lives, and to transcend this feeling of separateness so that we have more unity and connection. We realize we're actually a part of an integrated whole. We're part of nature, not something separate. And today we have division as the shadow. And I think what we're seeing a lot of right now and how the world is changing and shifting is that we're seeing how a lot of the systems that have kept us divided, the systems that are rooted in fear, they're rooted in dominance and power over, in complicated structures and in hierarchy, those systems are starting to lose their credibility. Those systems are starting to lose their efficacy in a world where we are more and more connected, where we are evolving faster, where technology is changing more and more. Those systems that were built for stabilizing, setting foundation, and having control, and not allowing for change and evolution to continue to take place, are not serving any further. They're not serving us. It's a little bit like having a wartime leader and having a peacetime leader. We don't need a wartime leader right now. We don't need a survival-based leader that helps us get through. And when I say leader, I'm talking about leaders, of course, but I'm also talking about our society and how we see each other and how we live as a whole on planet Earth. We need a peacetime leader. We need a peacetime society moving forward. And this requires that we have a very different view on what authority is, on what the attributes and characteristics of a leader are, and on who we lead, who leads and who follows, who we follow, how we decide we're going to follow, when we give our authority over to something else. So we're going to dive into all of that today. In the shadow of division, we not only have hierarchies in our systems that compartmentalize information and control and have dominance and don't allow for autonomy and real creativity to take place. We actually have internalized this concept and thinking of hierarchies in our minds at this point. And so we see the world and we see our other fellow humans as other groups that are separate from us. We have, as a result, different economic class systems and castes. We have different races. We have different nations. We've got different religions. We have genders. We have all of these different separate boxes that we're putting each other in to contend with that keep us separated. And our minds are organizing them in some type of hierarchy as to which should have more or less power. We also seem to do this with ourselves and the rest of the planet, seeing as we try to think that we humans are at the top of the food chain, at the top of this hierarchy of this planet that we're living on. We have dominion. Apparently, that's something that's been granted to us, and we can do whatever we want to with this planet. Like, we are at the pinnacle of this hierarchy, and everything else is just below us. Nonsense. I call nonsense. But that's how our view of our collective reality has been shaped. And that's how our minds see and interact with the world. even within our organizations, in our companies, in our, governments and systems, you just like take for 2 seconds to reflect and see how much hierarchy there is built in, how many gates there are, how many ceilings there are, how many levels of, you can't go above this person, or you can't go around this obstacle. You have to stay where you are in the level that you got to. It's crazy pants. And we think that these people that are at higher levels than us in this fabricated construction somehow have more power, and they have the right to have more power because they've somehow gotten to that level in an organization. And that is really what is underlying this shadow of division. It is not only that we have prized a certain type of archetype as a leader that we follow, but it's also that we're giving away our authority and believing in that leader as being a better leader than we can be to ourselves. Let's dive in. So we've got leaders that we are following that are really programmed in this consciousness that we're in to lead by force, domination, power over, by forcing their way to the top and then doing whatever they can to maintain their position through manipulation, through all kinds of fear tactics. They are focused on command and control and hierarchy and enabling. Because when leaders get into positions in this manner, when we like follow someone in this way, we're subtly declaring that we're in a victim state and that we need this superior leader to guide us, to make decisions for us, to have power over everything that's going on, to construct our reality, and that we're buying into that because somehow we just can't do it ourselves. We don't have the authority to do it ourselves. And these people rising up in this way, forcing their way up in this way, when they get into a position of power, they want more power, they want to keep it. So there is a fear that emits here from the shadow of losing power. And we're losing power at 2 levels. We're losing power for those people who are in a leadership position, have achieved some sort of power, and now they're terrified of letting it go. They want to reinforce the dynamic that they are a powerful leader, taking care of, shepherding, parenting, a whole host of people that just can't do it themselves, that rely on them. And so they want to keep people in that same dynamic, that same energetic, where they rely on this leader because that leader doesn't want to lose the power that they've achieved. And the power comes with all manner of trappings in this human life. And then the other fear of power that we have in this shadow dynamic is the actual fact that we're sinking into this victim state, that we are losing our own authority when we actually buy into these leaders. It never quite feels good. It can feel good if we're like really in a fear state, but then if we're actually thinking about on a day-to-day basis, the things that we are ascribing to that we can't do anymore. I want to, for example, just throw something out here like this. In most places, foraging, which is literally going outside and picking food that is naturally available to us because, hey, we live in nature. And there's food all around us. Most of it just have no idea. There's food everywhere. You can go outside and there's dandelion, there's plantain, there's all mushrooms everywhere. Some are edible. And we used to be able to go and actually just feed ourselves without having to rely on going to the store and paying for dandelion greens, which you can now buy at the grocery store. But they're just everywhere in nature. But apparently now, and for a very long time, foraging has been illegal in many places, and it comes with huge fines and even jail time in some cases. This is an example of how ridiculous power and hierarchy can get when we give our authority away and we can no longer do the simplest things that are reasonable for a human animal to do on this planet, which is to go outside and pick some dandelion greens and feed yourself. And instead, we've now given this authority away. This is now some law that we have to abide by. That's crazy, right? It's kind of insane. And when we think about we actually have a moment where the cognitive dissonance fades. And this veil of division and this veil of the shadow can be removed for a second here. And we can see how insane it is that we can't actually just go simply feed ourselves. And it's actually now deemed illegal. We've given away our power. We've given away our individual rights to just exist on this planet. And instead, we've co-opted in some type of divisive, hierarchy-based system where we've given our power to these leaders. They have over time created this whole construct and all of these laws. And as a result, now we have to scrape by and earn a living to go buy the dandelion greens at the grocery store that we could have just walked outside and eaten. Now, the companies that are selling dandelion greens want you to keep buying dandelion greens. And the leaders that we've put in power want us to continue to need them to be in power. And so you see there's just this crazy cycle that continues to happen in the shadow of division when we give our power away, when we give our authority away to others. And not only that, but then over time, in generations, we lose the knowledge and the wisdom that we used to have that was paired with our authority. Most people don't even know you can eat dandelion greens or that they're just everywhere outside, or they would be afraid to do so. This is just one example. Chickens is another example. In many places, you can't have chickens in your backyard. It's like an ordinance. You just can't do it. You can't feed yourself. You cannot feed yourself in many places. It's against the law. This is an example. All right, so let's talk about this. What happens when we get into this leadership state of division that's focused on hierarchy and power over is that we keep electing more and more leaders like this because we keep keeping ourselves in this state of thinking we need these powerful leaders to make the changes. And we think that they're going to make the changes that actually bring about a world that's better for us. But the issue is they're not. They're going to keep, if we keep electing these leaders that are focused on power, hierarchy, and force, what they're going to create is more power, hierarchy, and force. The problem is we don't have an ability to look and see and recognize these other type of leaders, these natural leaders that exist that are more empathic and heart-centered and actually have a lot of virtue. We kind of pretend like, oh, that must be nice. Oh, in a better world, you might be a leader. And we kind of just throw them like to the wayside and value these more like alpha archetypes in leadership. And what happens is just so much of a culture of victimhood and enablement. And we see in our society that what keeps us there is that we give a lot of voice to symptoms and symptoms being addressed, and never the root causes being addressed. I'm going to use an example here that might feel a little bit, it's just the one that popped into my mind as I was preparing my notes this morning. Not meant to be divisive in any way. We're talking about division today. So just hold this space with me. But when COVID came through and when we had the pandemic, it was very early on discovered that vitamin D and people being overweight, which I'm an overweight person, I'm going to sit here and just fully own this, struggled with it more. If we had better vitamin D intake and we didn't weigh as much, COVID didn't seem to have as much of an impact on us. But those things seemed to be swept under the rug, never to be talked about again, never really to be talked about by the mass media. That could really have helped a lot of people if we had, instead of pouring our money and our funds into a lot of other directions in terrifying humans and locking them down and doing all these things, which I don't really have much opinion on that, so don't take this as my opinion. What if instead we would have had a campaign where we're like, you can't really catch a thing outside, everybody go be outside in the sunshine, vitamin D really helps. Nobody heard about that though. Or can we help everyone who is at home get healthy? Where do we funnel some money and some support into that in a way where people can lose weight so that if they do get the coronavirus, it's not going to impact them as much? These are just really examples. I'm not trying to make a point or a statement here. It's just what popped into my head as a recent example of this. And the example and the point I'm trying to make is, in a system where we have enablement, where we are the victims that pour our power and our authority into these authority figures that are outside of ourselves. Yes, Megan, it's crazy that the beaches and parks were closed. It's kind of insane. It's really insane. When we pour our authority and our power into others, and into others that lead by dominance, force, and hierarchy, they will keep us in a state of enablement because they want to maintain power, and we want to maintain that somebody else is going to fix our lives for us. Even though time after time it's been proven that that's not the case, and they don't actually do that. They don't actually help us create this change. We still have this belief. We are hoping until the end of time that someone else will just take care of it for us and that we don't have to take responsibility. What happens is we keep addressing symptoms instead of root causes. We never actually get to the bottom of problems, because when we address symptoms instead of root causes, we can keep pretending like we're trying to fix something, and we never do. And we keep us in this dynamic, in this cycle perpetually. There's no trust. There's no intimacy or real connection here. There's no two-way communication here. There's no creativity here, and there's no cooperation here. What exists here is competition, and every man for himself, every business for himself, every country for himself, however we want to say that. Now, what we're going to look at next is the repressive and the reactive states, which is really fascinating. And I have definitely identified with both of these once again in my life. The repressive or hidden state, where it's more introverted, the energy collapses inward, it's more repressed, is hidden. So in the shadow of division, the repressive expression is hidden. And this is where we have people that are natural leaders. And when I say natural leaders, I mean leaders that are guides, they're empathic, they listen, they enhance cooperation and harmony, and they're virtuous. They have a different way of leading, a softer way, a more holistic way of leading. And these people right now in this world that we've been living in have been hiding themselves because they don't believe in their own power. They don't believe in the fact that others would recognize them. And so they don't recognize the leader within themselves. And as a result, they live behind the scenes and they have a whole bunch of views on how they would do things differently and how much more effective they could be, but they never allow themselves to step out as a leader. And what happens is they experience a huge amount of pressure, frustration, resentment. They get very bitter. This is where I've lived for many years. And they're shielding and hiding their power. They're shielding and hiding their leadership. They're terrified that other people will see it, but what they want most is for other people to see it so that they can step into it. But the elixir here is that you have to actually recognize that leadership authority in yourself. And this is true for me. This is true for every human. Recognize the leadership authority in yourself. Oh, I know, Megan, the bitter stage sucks. It sucks so hard. Okay, here is the key. You cannot wait around. until someone else is like, wow, you'd be a really great leader. Let me just make you a leader. And I'm going to do everything I can to pave the way forward. And I'm just going to plant you there and everything will be great. And you can just shine. We have to recognize our natural leadership and authority inside first. We have to be the first follower. We have to be our own first person that recognizes our authority and our leadership. And I'm speaking to every single human right now. Every one of us needs to recognize our own authority in this world. That's how we get to freedom and sovereignty, by the way, which is not this conversation, but I just want to bookmark that. Here, I'm going to put a pin in that. The other expression in the shadow of division is the reactive state, where it's externally expressed. It's a lot more anger-based, projection-focused, and this is dictatorial. I've been here too. This is abusing positions. This is using others to your advantage. There is so much manipulation that happens here. People that live here are master manipulators. I'm sure that we can probably all think of a leader that we've encountered, a boss or a political figure in our lifetime, in our own personal experience, where we have seen, maybe not in the moment, maybe afterward, the manipulation that's taken place, the gaslighting that's taken place. And what happens is these leaders tend to try to trap their followers into a perpetual follower state. So they need this leader. This leader is needed. We can only rely on this one person to save us. It's like this savior complex. This is where cults happen. This is where dictatorships happen. I have definitely taken power and forced my way into positions and work and forced my agenda on projects and done things like that. Absolutely, I can identify with this. This is not the type of leader I want to be in the world. I think this is really an old way of leading we need to allow to go away. Because what it does is it really asks people to be in that perpetual victim state, where the repressive is more about, we are in a victim state, let's recognize our own leadership. This is very much like, I'm in a powerful state, I want you all to not be powerful and for you to need me. Like, I'm going to save you and I have all of the answers. And people here will keep people in that position. I see this a lot in coaches online that build program after program after program, where they really keep people needing their services. If you ever engage with someone, whether it's a consulting company or a coach or anyone like that, where you're buying services from them and they continuously make you feel like you can't do it on your own, they're never empowering you. Now, I know this is different if you're like paying a freelancer to do a specific job over and over. But if you're seeking expertise and you're trying to level up and grow in a particular area, whether that's business or your own leadership in life, and the person that you're working with is keeping you kind of in this need, like you need now the next level of purchase from them. Now you need to buy this level of program in order to take it to the next step. And you never seem to achieve that just beingness and like real ownership of yourself. You're always kind of still looking to that authority figure. You never see yourself as a peer at any state. That's a signal of this dictatorial, reactive leadership, whether they're aware that they're embodying it or not. And of you being in that like needy victim state of never fully establishing your own authority and leadership in your power. What's really fascinating here is that we get into the gift of guidance out of the shadow of division, where we look at the world and our leaders as our saviors, as those who will control and change the world the way that we think that we want it to be, even though they have their own agenda. What we really need in order to move into a peacetime society, a society built on more love, collective and cooperation and wholeness and connection, is we need to recognize these leaders that actually have the gift of guidance, the gift of facilitation, the gift of listening to other people. These leaders move from being self-serving to being whole-serving. We move from individual thinking to collective thinking and cooperation. So maybe you've experienced a leader like this at work, a manager that you've had, or you've seen someone else in the world embody these qualities where they listen more than they speak. They're focused on getting the best ideas out of a group, on getting rid of roadblocks or obstacles for the group so that they can do their best work. They're focused on helping troubleshoot and facilitate conversations, to dispel conflict when it happens, to build trust and intimacy of the group. This is the type of leadership that we're needing to move toward. This is the type of leadership with the gift of guidance. These leaders want to empower people to lead themselves. These are the leaders that would lead from the side instead of the front. Like what do they say? The sage on the stage is the divisive division-based leader, and the guide on the side is the guidance-based, empowering leader that we need for today and tomorrow. And this person is really, really good at having empathy for what everyone is going through, for the suffering of what people are going through. And this is where, for me, I get to the dynamic of we actually get to the root cause of things. When we listen as leaders and we look for root causes and we have empathy for what people are grappling with, we can actually get to those root causes and create change there. And what happens is when people are actually seen and heard once and for all, we have a lot of people that really desperately want to be heard right now by their leaders, and they're not. And we're not. And when we actually are heard, we have permission to actually sit with what we're grappling with. And this is so good because it really connects to the work we're doing in Shadow School every single day, which is we're giving space to look at the root causes of some of our pain and suffering in life as humans. And so when we have this empathy, we have someone else who we see as a leader that empowers us. It sits next to us, not above us, not in front of us on a stage. They're like right here with us, looking at the thing we're going through. They're asking us questions to get the shape of it and understand it. And in doing that, they're being of service. And they're facilitating us having more authority, knowing ourselves better, being able to work and collectively cooperate more, having more creativity, having trust in others, being able to step into our own power. These leaders are very inspiring. And a good, I think like a good judge of this is a division-based leader will want to always be needed. And a guidance-based leader will want to get the heck out of your way. Like they want to get you set up in a way where you can roll. You have a lot of autonomy and you have the power to live and lead your life and your work in whatever way you see fit. And they want to get out of the way. So they actually want you to get rid of them as fast as you can. And then they're here if you need anything, if you need some support. But they want you to run the show, basically. They want you to have authority. And what's really fascinating here is that we then get into this Siddhic state of virtue. And we've been talking a little bit about how we don't recognize leaders in the shadow of division that have unbending virtue, right? We don't really recognize those leaders. And then in the gift of guidance, we start to see that there are leaders that will actually show up in service to the whole and to the collective and to others. And that does seem to be virtuous. But when I get to virtue here, I'm not meaning necessarily a set of acts, a set of moral virtues. That's not what we're getting at here in this Siddhic state. The Siddhic state is always that state that is beyond words. It's not really about doing, it's much more about being. And so I do have one little line that I plucked out of the Gene Keys book that I want to leave you with today that summarizes virtue in this Gene Key. And it's simply this: virtue is the unimpeded expression of nature through humans living at their zenith. Virtue is the unimpeded expression of nature through humans living at their zenith. What the heck does that mean? Well, nature being everything, the nature of something being everything. If we're surrendered to the actual core essence of the pure nature of what we are as humans, not driven by all of these ego fears, not driven by all the conditioning that we've acquired over the years and the protection mechanisms, but if we are actually experiencing life through the core foundational unique essence that we came here with in the first place, that we are designed to bring to the world. And each one of us has our own unique purpose in this, our own unique set of gifts and expressions for how we show up. That, in fact, is our purpose in life. It's not something we do. It's not something we go find outside of ourselves. Our purpose is how we be. It's how we show up and our unique essence and value and quality that we bring to anything and everything that we do in life. That is nature in my definition. And in this, we say virtue is the unimpeded expression of that nature through humans living at their zenith. So that means not only are we living our purest, truest, higher self version of ourselves, nature, our unique expression, but we're also living it at the highest level, the most authentic, the most brilliantly expressed, the most purposeful. It's so beautiful. That is what virtue is. So now imagine we go back to those repressed leaders inside of all of us. The repressed leaders that haven't recognized their value. And we start to do the work of understanding and reconnecting with our unique essence, our truest, unimpeded nature. And we begin to serve others and guide others through our leadership. Not so that they have to look to us again, but in a way that we're serving and supporting ourselves and others. And that's how we achieve virtue, this beautiful state. Imagine if all of us were working on that every day. Beautiful. Beautiful. Close my book of notes. That's what I'll leave you with for today's episode of Shadow School. I hope you enjoyed this. I loved having this conversation with you as always. I'm always getting a little emotional at the end, thinking about all of the beauty of what's possible when we can step into these divine gifts, these beautiful gifts that we have inside of ourselves that we are covering over with all these fears. So I hope that you keep showing up, examining these fears with me, releasing them out into the ether so that we can get there together. Love you so much, sending you so much love, and I will see you with episode 8 tomorrow.